All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're here to talk about why most career advice for women is kind of complete bullshit. I'm really excited to be here today with Allison Venditti. Um, Allison, can you tell us a little bit about who you are? Tell our audience what they need to know about you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Venditti. I am the founder of an organization called Moms at Work. Moms at Work is Canada's largest network for working mothers and its only advocacy group. So Moms at Work has two parts. We do career coaching and community building, similar to what Holly does. And then I have a full-time second job, which is advocating for systemic change for women, specifically mothers in Canada.
Nice. And Allison, you've had some pretty significant wins in those areas. Do you want to do a quick tour of some of the hits for
Oh,
folks who want to know how good you are?
yeah. Quick tour of the wins. So we've gotten pay transparency in BC, Ontario, PEI. It will be in Nova Scotia and Manitoba shortly. We helped roll out $10 a day childcare. We made significant EI changes during the pandemic, including lowering the number of hours, reducing all of the wait time periods. And I am in Ottawa this week making more EI changes. So we are very busy and we are very good at what we do. So
Yeah. Allison, the thing I love about when you sort of say those stories is like you just listed off like 6 or 7 different truly amazing things that you've done. And you do them so regularly that it's really easy for you to just be like, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. But actually, any one of those would be a landmark achievement. Like, just the things you've done around pay transparency, in BC and Ontario and the places that already have it implemented. I know folks at WIMDI use that, see that every day. I use it when I work with my negotiation clients all the time. I just got off a call with somebody who's using some information from the fact that pay transparency now exists to go and, get what will end up being probably a solid $120,000 in her net worth in her role while she works on a single project. And so, all of that work is really amazing. And I think, I've seen the fruits of your work and I didn't even know who you were for years and years and years. So I'm excited to have you here. I'm really honored that you're spending time with us and taking time out of your day that you're normally spend doing that stuff to come and talk about, some of the things that mutually enrage us. Right? I think that's really good. Okay. So really quickly, actually, before I close the chapter on that, for folks who want to find out about your organization, where do they find you on the internet?
I have way too much fun on LinkedIn, so you can just follow me at Allison Venditti on LinkedIn. If you follow me, you'll find out why. We have an Instagram account that we just share. We just share a lot of information. Moms at Work also does an incredibly large number of free resources. So, for example, like we did the first comprehensive survey of top-up programs in Canada. So we have like most employers listed and what their top-ups are.
Nice.
So all of those are available for free on our website, which is thisismomsatwork.com. So those are kind of like the best ways to follow us and get involved. So yeah, follow us there.
Great. And folks who are watching this on YouTube will have all those links down below.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Allison, you're amazing. I'm also going to take a quick second. If you landed on this video and you don't already know who I am, I'm Holly Burton. I am WIMDI's founder. I'm also an executive coach for women in male-dominated industries. I've been doing this for nigh on 10 years now. And prior to running WIMDI and working as a coach, I was a mining engineer. Working in open pit mines, absolutely loving my life, being a huge nerd about spreadsheets and, mine planning and drill and blast and all that kind of stuff. And, simultaneously a huge nerd about building my own career and leading effectively. And eventually, moved out of that industry so I could, make that my first and only love, and help a lot of women build really interesting, exciting careers. And a big part of my transition at that time, like, what do they say? My villain origin story, Allison, I think was actually so much of what we're going to talk about today, because I observed over and over and over again all of these kind of bullshit narratives around women's leadership. And I have these vivid memories of sitting in camp at my last job in mining, like, running at all these challenges at work and Googling to try to find them and just finding these such patronizing Forbes.com articles about like, ladies, get a mentor. And I'd go to, women's groups at that time and they would all be talking about the same stuff. And like, I think at that time, mentoring was really hot at that time. And I probably had 6 mentors and I was just like still struggling. And I'm like, but I'm doing the thing. And why isn't it working? And that's why WIMDI exists. That's why what I do exists. And, now 10 years later, you and I are going to have a little chat about it with the rest of the world so they can start to see some of the evil that we see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
and I can jump in just so everybody understands why mentorship for women became a thing is because that's what the federal government decided to fund. So they funded all these mentorship programs that, like we don't have a lot of women in leadership. So they were putting more pressure on senior level women to do more than they already did, when in fact we needed men to be mentors, and that didn't happen. And then none of it worked.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, but that's supposed to work. And I'm like, mentorship is not a thing that I like would stamp anybody's career on. And as someone who's in senior leadership, I'm like, I don't have time to like mentor like endlessly, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that was sort of what kicked off you and I talking about this, was this thing around mentoring, and that fact that you just shared, that it was the coverage that we got around it, especially in, women at insert industry here style groups. Those groups are all nonprofits and they're grant funded. And that was news to me, right? Like that really helped me make sense of why this thing that, like Allison said, I was like, how does this work though? Really? Like, is this actually the thing? And yet it was everywhere, right? And so I think there's been these sort of like distinct patterns over the years where you'll see, kind of for me, it was like, 15 years ago, it was all about mentoring. Kind of 10 years ago, imposter syndrome was the big conversation. 5 years ago, right around the pandemic, we started seeing organizations all start talking about, oh, women need to build resilience. Like, oh, cool, I need to get better at withstanding the abuse that's being handed to me. I love this narrative, right? And so that sort of government funding model is part of that. What other incentives do you see driving this clumpy and bizarre advice that women get about their careers?
Like the worst thing that happened was Lean In, like truly.
Like Sheryl Sandberg's
book,
you mean?
That book, which is like, you are not working hard enough. So I think everything, like work wasn't built for women, and no one's willing to address the systems level. Like no one's willing to like talk, because that's hard. It's hard to change and move systems. And so people just get discouraged and they say, okay, well, we just need to teach women to ask for more. We need to teach them. And I was like, yes, but they need to know, like, hence pay transparency. I'm like, you need to know like what other people are making. Women are much more risk adverse than men. Mothers even more so, for good reason. I have a mortgage. I have 3 little kids. I need to know what work's going to look like. What are the benefits going to look like before I make a jump? It's the reason I started Moms at Work, because we need to ask each other these questions. Men don't need the same amount of information before they do something. So I always say to people, I'm like, before you bought a car, how much freaking research did you do? I bet it was a lot. Before you go on vacation, it's a lot. And I'm like, when we do our careers and choices for our kids, it's like 10 times that amount. The clunkiness, remember, a lot of this is being packaged and sold to you. So the clunkiness is like, what is going to sound good for corporate to buy for women? They're not selling to women. They're selling to corporations. For women. Because that's where the money is, right? So I always caution people to be like, when you look at an organization, where's the money coming from? Nonprofits, government, women in finance, banks, like who's funding this? Moms at Work, no one. Moms. That's the driver. Like, so you really have to look at where the money is coming from in every way, shape, and form. And then everything makes sense. You're like, oh, they made a call out for like, everybody's like, yay, gender-based violence is a thing. I'm like, yeah, because they got 3 years worth of funding. And I'm like, what happens when that 3 years worth of funding runs out?
Disappears. Then we can move on to the next thing, right? Yeah. And it's, Allison, you and I were talking prior to this call about how we structure both of our organizations, and both of us are like that. Like I have been really clear since the beginning that I don't want WIMDI to be sort of glossy corporate package with, 20 sponsors and their logos are the biggest thing that you see when you come near us, right? Because that creates the incentives. And I've had conversations, I go and do a lot of speaking for organizations. And I remember very vividly having a conversation with somebody where they wanted to bring me in to do a talk, and they were in between. They had requested a talk on imposter syndrome, which I only have because so many people ask about it, and then I can stand up on stage for an hour and be like, and it doesn't exist. But they asked about that, and they asked for a talk on negotiation because that was what the women who worked there wanted. And they made a decision between the two of them, and they said, well, I think we're going to go for the imposter syndrome talk, because that way the problem is on the women and we won't have a bunch of people asking us for raises. And I was like,
That's a choice.
do not want to come and do this for you anymore.
Yeah.
But I've seen that choice get made over and over and over again. And you see it in corporations and what they can fund nefariously or even well-meaning. I've had conversations with corporations where they go, we do want them to get promoted. And also we can't promote every single person at once. And so it creates this logistical challenge for us. Right. But you run into that there, but you also run into it in these, affinity community groups like you and I both run, where there's the government funding initiatives, but they're also, because they're so beholden to sponsorship, they can't be loud. They can't talk about the things that matter. They can't do things that would endanger the interests of the people paying the bills, which really ties their hands, right?
My hands are very untied.
My hands are very untied. Yeah, my hands are very untied. And I work with people one-on-one as opposed to with companies for that reason, because I want my hands to be untied, right? I want to be able to have my clients actually be my clients. Okay, so we're doing this whole video and we've sort of been talking about it already about how this advice is kind of BS, right? Like why do you think the focus on these topics has not been that helpful? The topics of like confidence, imposter syndrome, resilience, mentoring, all those things that we've seen over and over again.
There's no change that comes from that. It just blames women for things that I'm like, also like, yes, imposter syndrome. B, it only applies to women. Like my dudes, like, let's look around and say that. But like okay, great. I have imposter syndrome. Now what? Like,
now what?
Like, now what?
Yeah.
So I'm like, the other thing is like, there's only so many things that you can do to quote unquote fix women. Negotiation, like all the things, coaching, figuring out who you are. I get it. And I'm like, but if you're putting them into workplaces that are not designed for them and then they break, and then the cycle continues. Now they have more imposter syndrome. They did something wrong. That like the way that employers treat caregivers, women, anybody who has a life outside of work, because let's be clear, work was not only designed for men, it was designed for men with a stay-at-home wife. So the number one thing that CEOs have in common is not the fact that they're men. It's not the fact that they're white. It's the fact that they have a stay-at-home partner. And then their view of the organization is built on that notion. Yeah. And so I'm of two minds. One is I spend way more time than I should now being like, I think women should be self-employed. It's dangerous, it's hard, but if that's an option for you or you have any sort of interest, 100%, because then you get to build companies and work the way you want. Truly. Second part is...
And hire people where you can create a structure that works for them too.
Yeah. And I'm like, I delight on going up and talking with like other founders. Like I've worked in tech or whatever. And I did a talk called like a hot take called "You Work Too Much."
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the problem. I'm like, you work too much. And so I talked about moms at work. We work 4 days a week until 3 p.m. Whole team. We work remotely. We work flexibly. We don't work Christmas break. We don't work March break. We don't work PA days. We don't work Fridays. We don't work the last week of summer, and each of us takes between 4 and 5 weeks off in the summer. Yeah. And I was like, and what nobody put together was they assumed that because we worked like that, somehow we only made part-time money. And I was like, of course you would assume that because you're stupid. And you can't do math. But I was like, my dude, the flex is not 100-hour work week. Yeah. I'm like, the flex is, I'm like, I didn't start my business to make $1 billion, to scale, to grow, to crush, to sell out. I'm like, I built it because I like what I do. Yeah. I want to spend time with my family. I want to make a difference in the world. And I don't want to like burn myself out in the process.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't have examples of that.
Yeah. And I think like, the way that capital gets deployed is a big part of that. You know what I mean? As well, where there's this like incessant growth narrative that has to happen. And businesses like you run, like I run, like so many folks run, where the point of the business is to do great work and create a good life for somebody, both financially and logistically from a time perspective. Like that's viewed as kind of failing, within capitalism because the growth isn't there necessarily. And like, that's not a failure. That's from great. Tech. Yeah.
Right. Let's be very honest. My butcher, my favorite restaurant, my favorite coffee shop, the clothing store where I buy my pants, the independent bookstore. These are the small businesses that I love. These are what makes our communities our communities. I don't give a shit about like whatever X or whatever.
Amazon.
I'm like, these are not good models of business. Yeah. They're not anything anybody should aspire to.
Yes.
I want people to day to day look around and be like, I don't know when business and entrepreneurship became that,
Yeah.
because for 95% of businesses, it's not that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just about having a decent life, having some employees, moving through the world day to day, selling
Selling
some widgets.
plants,
Yeah.
sell your plants, love your plants, sell your books, love your books. Like,
Yep.
I am so thankful that there are people in this world who love bees, who love plants, who love
Yes.
dogs, who
Yeah.
love woodworking. I'm so thankful that we have so many people. I'm like, I love advocacy and I
Yeah.
love like policy stuff.
Mhm.
And there's people I work with who love calm stuff. And I'm like, thank God there's just so many people who do so many different things, because that's what makes the world great.
I'm really like struck as you're talking about this because I agree with you. I think it's amazing that there's all these people with their little nerdy fiefdoms
Yeah.
off building the thing that I don't love, but they love, and thank God they love it because we all need bees. You know what I mean? We die without bees. But like, I had this like I watched this woman years ago on the site that now has no name, Twitter, and she was in this weird fight with her former employer, and she was sort of facing some defamation. She'd been let go
Yeah.
and now she was getting defamed, and she was talking about online with people who were like, are you going to go after them? Are you going to correct the narrative that they're putting out in
Yeah.
the press? And she's like, no, straight up, I'm not going to do it.
Sure.
And she said the point of this fight of them defaming me is to distract me from producing my art. And
Right.
so the best revenge here is for me not to sit there and buy into this thing where I have to defend myself. It's just to go out and create more great art, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm not in the defending myself business. I'm in the creating art
Right.
business. And that was really informative for me. And it really, the connection I'm making in this moment is, you're talking about people doing the thing that they should be doing, making the art that they should make. And then there's this whole narrative around, ladies, go work on your imposter syndrome. Ladies, go find yourself a mentor. Ladies, go blah, 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 blah. And there's this huge cost. It's non-zero when you're busy focusing on all of these bullshit narratives that get spun up through the media, through corporate incentives, through, governmental funding and things like that. You are not doing the thing that you should be doing in the world, right? Like, the world is poorer for you doing all the navel gazing that they ask you to do because it's more convenient in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And it's by design. It's, it also sells you stuff that to
Mhm.
fix you, right?
Right.
Like, everything is designed to sell you a water bottle, a walking pad, whatever you want that's going to make your life better. And I was like, okay, right? Like, and we can all believe those different versions of those things.
Mhm.
That's like, if you feel like it's going to help you, I'm like, go for it. But
Mhm.
I always tell people, like, constantly, how proud I am of them just for like doing things, because I'm like, that's something we never say to ourselves or say to each other or acknowledge with each other. And I think that's really important. That can change people's opinions of themselves, how they show up in the world.
Mhm.
And you know, using your example, I'm like, I was like, oh, I'm the villain in that story. Because at Moms at Work, we do sue employers, right? Like, that, where
Uh-huh.
people come to us and they're like, this happens. And I was like, guess what? I'm like, my now BFF, who's an employment lawyer, I'm like, Moms at Work offers, with Deb Hudson, free legal consults if you're laid off during maternity leave, because the number
Mhm.
one reason women weren't getting them is because they were like, well, I just lost my job. I have daycare. I
I
have
don't have
whatever.
the
We
money.
will pay.
Yeah.
We will pay for you to do this.
Mhm.
But we've then said, okay, great, we'll help you fund it. We will bring you to human rights. If you're willing to do this, we're willing to fund it. Let's fight it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's not for everybody,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
like, that's fine. But if you have someone and an entire like network behind it, and then we make a stink in the PR, we make a stink everywhere, because I was like, if you're willing to sit with us through this pain, I'm like, let's think about what this will do for other people, because in a sense, that's also creating something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think,
Right.
like that woman sort of talking about, let me go create my art. The art might be the beekeeping or, the software development or whatever art you're doing, but it also might be the art of, changing this shit that just happened to me because I can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, there can be the decision to go and explicitly take that on. And I think that's really important work to do as well. Right.
Yeah. And it's hard to do on your own, right? Like,
Yeah.
everybody's seen this. Everybody's seen this with Me Too movement, whatever. I'm like, this is hard to do on your own. Um, And it's hard to feel like you're being attacked. But when moms at work sticks their name on something, I'm basically saying, come for me. You come for me. Come at
Yeah.
me and see what goes. And I'm like, we've got enough women behind us that is stupid. If you're a company and you're going to come for me, I'm going to come back because I'm like, I got nothing to lose. Nothing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's an amazing, you're talking earlier about women being self-employed. That's one of the amazing side effects of it is if you can be self-employed and, build a team, build a community and rally folks around you, there's an invincibility to it. It's one of my favorite things about running my business is I get to go out and say the kind of shit to companies on stage, to their faces in back rooms that I couldn't necessarily say as easily as a mining engineer because of where my funding came from, right? And it's amazing to be able to just be like, yeah, come at me, bro. Now what? It's a really cool, comfortable place to be.
Well, and I'm going to tell people, I'm like, listen, there's also like two sides to me. There's the public side. And then I have spent my life advising corporate. I've spent my life in union negotiations. And this is not how you do that. Right?
How do you do that?
This isn't about me. It's about them. Like when you're in a union negotiation, it's not me. I'm representing, like the employer has 7,000 employees and they have to go home at night and feed their children and feed, their loved ones. And they're fighting to make work a better place. And for the employers that I work with on that stuff, I'm like, we're trying to, balance a lot of different priorities. But I was like, I am not a central force in that room. I'm the person who like brings laughter and takes breaks and, does I hear you? Like I'm an HR professional through and through. My expertise is in like difficult HR, leaves, health and safety, parental leave, sick leave, what happens when your baby passes away on maternity leave, all this stuff. And it's messy, but it isn't about me. And for a lot of people in leadership, like once you enter that, it's not about you. It's how you're fighting for your team and how you're showing up for what they need. So, I can say, come for me. And actually I had to incorporate because some companies did come for me. They lost, but they came for me. And, but I still work. I have to chameleon because I need to be whatever people need me to be for them in that moment. And my ego's got to sit aside.
Yeah. There's like a fine balance of knowing when to be the story and when to not be the story. Right. Yeah. Something that showed up for me just now as you were talking is, we were sort of talking about the power of the collective, right? And what I notice about some of the narratives we're talking about, about women needing to be more confident, about imposter syndrome, heck, even mentoring to some extent, they're all really framed as, like you said earlier, the woman's the problem. It's an individual thing, right? And it ends up with people really doing that work internally by themselves and not, like you said, fighting to change the system, right? But the cost of that is there's so much more separation, right? It frames women as small. It frames women as their primary challenge being not being able to be a force to contend with. And then it forces them to work on that in isolation. So they feel small and they stay away from each other. Not that women never find community around a shared feeling of, lack of confidence or imposter syndrome, like that, those things happen, but it's not unifying. It's actually isolating. And so it's sort of functionally a way of offsetting cost, right? Because now if it's the women's problems to fix, they can pay for it. Companies don't pay for it. But it's also a way of interrupting organization to some extent because it's viewed as a single person problem and it doesn't create a lot of collective interest, right?
Yeah. So I will say this, I'm like, motherhood from the beginning is isolating in like the North American current context. And I'll frame it this way. I came from tech and other male dominated industries, and I know the power of community for those men to the tune of $30,000 a year golf memberships, to the tune of $30,000 a year racquetball memberships, to expensive dinners out, to do whatever. I'm like, and this is, women see a small part of that. They see a small part of it and they don't understand it. So what I see is as women, we go to school, do well in school, do better in school, get the degree, get the first job. And we spend so much time working in our career and not on it because we've been told like we've been aiming for things, especially high potential, high performing women. The grade, get the grade, get the grade, get the thing, get the promotion. And like you start to lose yourself and also stagnate. And people blame all variety of things. And I was like, you don't have a career community. You don't have a network. And even worse is that we're now like switching industries. And when you leave one industry, you lose your entire network. And so I was coaching women individually. All of them were like, I want to try something else. I need more information about that something else. I don't really want to make the jump to project management if I don't know what it's like, how much it pays. And I was like, okay, you guys don't need me. You need each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how Moms at Work started. Because I was like, this is stupid. I'm spending all my time just introducing everybody. And the number of direct referrals, direct hires, like every month, everybody's like, I got a new job. I got a new job in this economy, right? Like, it's like, I got a new thing. Someone was like, oh, like they're developing this role for me. They're just grading it. And I'm like, this is it, right?
Yeah.
You say I'm hiring for my team. I want to hire a Moms at Work person. I'm like, women don't want to join golf clubs. Yeah. But we do like to hang out with each other and go for walks. Yeah. We do like to go for early dinners where we only have to stay for an hour because then I don't want to miss bedtime. Like, like having people just do one-on-one and not constantly have to showing up for events. I was like, what would it look like if this happened? And my goal was that when I created Moms at Work, I'm like, what would it look like if someone said the like term, I'm Moms at Work, and that meant something. And someone applied for a job on a panel. And she had put Moms at Work at the bottom of her resume as whatever. And two of the panelists said, oh, we're part of Moms at Work too. Oh, amazing. Amazing. I was like, this is the old boys club. Yeah. For us. But at that mid and senior level, that's all that capital matters. Yes. Yeah. It's not just about applying for jobs anymore. And women have a really, really, really hard time with that notion that the stuff that they've always done isn't going to work anymore. Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that, women are consistently framed societally as executors. You know what I mean? Yep. Like the men come up with the big ideas, the women go get it done. Even you see it right down to like, who's out executing Christmas dinner, a bunch of women, right? Sure. Who's project managing the household, a bunch of women. And we get really well trained into that role. And then we do it really well in corporate. It gets really well rewarded in junior levels because junior levels are all about execution. Yep. And then we never get socialized into the idea that we have to be the idea person or the strategic person, whereas men implicitly get that message all the time, I think, when they're younger and all through their careers. And it's really explicitly encouraged. And for women, I see this over and over again where they miss that skill. And almost because they haven't spent that much time in it, they think they're not good at it or they think they're not interested in it. And they may not have initial skill at it, but like, it doesn't mean that they couldn't be great at it if they spent any time in it at all. They often like miss that part and then get stuck in this burnout execution thing where the ceiling is kind of midway through an organization if you're a really competent executor a lot of the time, right? And then the work just keeps piling on your plate. The better you get at it, the more you find women who say, yeah, I left and they hired 3 people to replace me. It's one of the most common phrases I hear at WIMDI, and I'm sure it's one of the phrases you hear. Well, and I'm very clear with my community that I was like, you don't have to be a leader. You don't have to be a manager. You can hate that stuff. And we have a lot of really skilled experts. And that is 100,000% a solid thing. Yeah. Workplaces look like this. Yep. That means that like, as you move up, there might be 4 marketing coordinators, 1 marketing like leader, 1 manager, and 1 director. And there's only room. And guess what? They might not be retiring for 10 years. Yeah. so then I'm like, then you have to make choices, right? Like, and that's not the company's fault. That's not your fault. That's not anybody's fault, but it is a discussion you have to have. And some people are like, I know I should want to be a manager. I'm like, no, you shouldn't, because if you don't have to. Had managers, like what would happen? It would be who'd do the work. So I'm like, that's not what ambitious means. That's not what like career growth means. And I also tell some people, I'm like, listen, not every job has to be a career. Do you know what I mean? Like it's okay to have a job where you're like clocking out at 4, going home.
Yep.
Like, that's cool too. So
Yeah.
I just really want people when they listen to be like, calm.
Yeah.
You know, like as my husband is telling me, so calm, calm. And I'm like, yes, calm. But like, you don't have to do this today or even
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I tell people, especially when they have little kids or their parents are sick, I'm like, life isn't going to be like this forever.
Yeah.
And you cannot like make decisions while you're going through this stuff. That's not fair either. And people tend to pick their career because it's the one thing they can control. You can't control your dad's cancer. You can't control your special needs kid. You can't control things. So women tend to pick the things that they can try and control. And I was like, are you grabbing at your career that you're kind of happy in because you can't do anything about the other stuff? And like 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, you're right. I just got it. I'm having a really hard time. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And so we've talked a lot about sort of the things that women get spun up into doing societally and, for all these different reasons. If you had to lay out, a couple of things that you really want women to focus on doing, what do you think are the key things?
One is I want everybody to like look in the mirror and say, I'm going to give myself a break. Like just stop. Stopping feels like failure for whatever reason. And I'm like, and then I want you to say to yourself, do I have a hobby? Do I bird watch? Do I go for walks? Do I make fancy coffee at home? Like, who are you outside of your career? Because like that's going to matter a lot throughout the rest of your life. So that's the first thing I say to people. I was like, this cannot be all consuming. I was like, no one's looking at Steve Jobs and being like, oh my goodness, I want his personal life. Like, I was like, I want you to look at the people who you're like, I really want to be like them and look at what that costs them.
Yeah.
Look at what it costs them. Their health, their life, their wife, their everything. I was like, that's not actually what you want. And I think once you have a really honest conversation about that, things look very differently. So that's the first thing. I'm like, what do you want out of this one precious life that you have? 2 is I ask people to tell me like what they need. Need is different. How much money, like for any career discussion I have, I'm like, what do you need?
Yeah.
Which money do you need? Where do you need to
time?
live? What like time? Like just like be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Like be true, not like what you want first, but what you need.
Yeah. And what you need is not the same as what you think you'll be permitted to have or what you think you can negotiate or what you think you can get. That's very different.
Yep. And like, that's a very important everything. And as people start to do this, I'm like, I will preface this by saying I'm a very strange woman in my 40s because like my mom died when I was very young. My father-in-law died when we were very young. I lost most of my family by the time I was 25. And then I had a brain injury and was off work for 3 years in my 30s when my kids were babies. And I'm like, I am deeply aware that I might not have a lot of time on this planet. And most people are not. And so they're making mountains out of things that I said, if you looked back 10 years from now and saw yourself doing this, would you still agree that that was the right thing to do at this moment? The answer is going to be no, because it's stupid or like your brother didn't call you. And I'm like, let's be very clear where we're spending our limited energy on doing things. The other thing I will say to everybody on here, I'm like, I don't watch television and I spend very little time on social media. I read a lot of books and I spend a lot of time with people. And I'm like, that is life-changing because you have to decide, do I want to spend 10 hours a week watching television? 40 hours a month?
Yeah.
Like,
Full week every single month. Yeah. What do you find exists in life outside of television and social media, Allison? What amazing things have come into your life to replace what was there as a result?
So that really wasn't ever there for me because I never really liked it. But through my brain injury, I lost the ability to read. I had to relearn to read over 2 years. I want everybody to go back and try and see what life is like when you can't read.
Yeah, hugely challenging.
And you will never take a book for granted again. I'm like, I was a history major. I was an HR policy. I had a photographic memory. I'm like all of those things that I never thought once or twice about. Like were gone, and it was horrifying and upsetting. And I got the letter from my insurance company that I would never work again. Not like here's your whatever. It's like you won't have a job, so have fun. And like I've got permanent nerve damage, like on the left side of my body. I'm like, I'm not interested in doing stupid shit anymore. Right. And so I just want people to be very mindful of the fact that like it's great to relax and it's great to chill out and it's great to do whatever. I'm like, but like look at everything around you and look at like your capabilities. I'm like, wouldn't you rather spend it going for a walk with your kid or, looking at birds or literally doing anything else other than like doing this? And the answer sometimes is no. I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. I just want to lie in front of the television, which is fine.
Yeah.
But like, these are choices. And like, we're only on this planet for like 4,000 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh.
Like that's
what a way
it.
to frame it. Yeah. 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 Well, and I think as well, like so many of us, what I really take from what you're talking about here with, figuring out what you want and figuring out what you need is so many of us are doing things kind of on autopilot or because we're obligated or because we've already started and so we're still doing it or that's the expectation, right? And what I'm hearing from you is it's really important for women to not just take in these external constraints and messages and instead sit there and really design how am I going to spend my time? How's it going to create the thing that I want? Like you can sort of steer that ship and I want to be really aware too that there will be lots of people probably listen to this where that's not how their life feels at all.
No,
You know what I mean? And there may be like constraints too that make that so that that's not the case, right? But there are probably for most of us, even if there are really big constraints that dictate certain areas of our lives, there's probably lots of space still where we can sit there and go, okay, and maybe not in this area, but in the rest of it, what am I actually going to design? How do I want to use those, like you said, 4,000 weeks that I've got to create what for myself? Not just what legacy or, what result out in the world, but what experience, right? Life is not just for results, it's also for enjoyment.
And I need to preface this where I was like, I need everybody to understand here. I'm like, my family came from forestry. The generational wealth wasn't helping my business. Being told I wasn't able to work anymore meant it would be extremely hard for my family. So I needed to make that. Moms at work had to make money or else I could not do it. So I was doing HR consulting while trying to build this thing because not being paid for 2 years wasn't a friggin' option. I have 2 kids with high medical needs. So I spend a significant amount of time at the hospital. I am like disabled in many ways. And I was like, I have every reason not to be doing things. Yeah. And I want people to know that like, because people are like, somebody said this to me. They're like, well, my brother-in-law is disabled and he does nothing. I'm like, no, we are not going to dictate to people how, when, and how hard they have it just because somebody else, which is why I refuse to do like brain injury talks because people look at me like a use case where I'm like, every human is different. And I was like, but I want people to understand that what I have and what they have that women didn't have 50 years ago and why this is so hard is choice. That is really, really complex for humans. And I see the problem as having too much choice. My grandfather didn't have a choice. He only had one thing. He had one job and had to support a family. He couldn't quit to like figure out who he was or get another degree so you could do a thing. I'm like, my grandmother couldn't work. My godmother got given a T-set and a letter from the provincial government when she got pregnant because you couldn't be pregnant at work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
In Canada in the 70s.
Yep.
So I want people to take a big step back and a breath and recognize that a lot of this difficulty is because you do have so many choices. And I think that is actually a really beautiful thing.
It's a really beautiful thing. And it's also a really new thing. I think about this a lot.
Yes.
Like, I think Allison, our story is somewhat similar in that like, I didn't grow up in a family that came from a ton of money. You know what I mean? I was the first person in my immediate family to graduate high school on time without getting a GED. And then off I went to university. That was not the story. And I, coming into corporate, had to learn, like if my dad was a gigging musician and my mother was a sign painter, if I had to go negotiate payment with a bar owner, I could probably had a social model for how to do that. but definitely not in the boardroom. Whereas, my partner, Bob, he grew up in a family of, doctors and lawyers, and he has so much more modeling around what that's supposed to look like. And so what you're talking about around choice is, yes, choice is complex, but we're also coming into it, especially women, maybe more broadly society, but especially women, we've never watched somebody build that to the extent that we have it available to us now, right? Like my grandmother, the choices that I have available to me, she didn't do those choices. She didn't teach my mother how to do it. My mother didn't teach me how to do it necessarily, right? And so we're building this from scratch. We're kind of writing it on a blank page. Also, we have no experience at writing things on a blank page because quite often we're running our lives dictated by the constraints. And it's relatively new in Canada for that to be so much less true for women, right?
So I will say, the one thing I will say about money is that was never my experience, because my grandmother used to keep track of everything in a little notebook, how much money they owed, how much money they think. She wrote everything down. My grandfather only had grade 3 education. So my grandmother went to high school, which was a really big deal. So he always called her like the brains of the family.
The smart one, yeah.
Yeah, this is the smart one. And my dad became an accountant. And growing up, my dad would have like his ledgers open, and like I would be doing that with him. But my dad negotiated everything. He negotiated 3% off a washing machine if he didn't use his credit card. He would drive down someone on a car. He would go into the gas station and ask if because he's like, down the street, it's 2 cents less. You really want me to do this thing? Can you just knock off $5? Like with the brazen audacity, right? And I was
love this.
Okay, right? And so and I didn't know any different. Because that's
you saw that was possible.
And my mom also did it, right?
Yeah.
She would get she was a school teacher. So she would go to all the garage. Oh my gosh, go to so many friggin' garage sales for anybody who's lived with a teacher. I'm trying to get toys and books. And she's like, I'll take the whole box. It gives me $5. I'm like, okay, this is normal. And the worst thing that can happen is someone says no. Nobody was pissed off, offended, upset. I'm like, you can ask. Yeah. Maybe they'll say no. So that's always how I've gone into negotiation. But also I grew up in very unionized, teacher, forestry, everybody was unionized. Everybody knew what everybody made. And so when I hit corporate, I was like, this is messed up. I'm like,
this is so weird.
I was like, why are you want me to ask people how much they want to be paid? I'm like, stupid. Just tell them what we're offering them. But they're like, we can't do that. I was like, oh my God.
That's not how the game works. Yeah.
That's stupid. And I remember saying that to someone and they were like, yeah, that is stupid. And anybody in unions didn't know this was a thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Super fun for me. Yeah.
It's a very bizarre way to organize labor. And it really works financially for companies when people don't understand what their work is.
And it really works against women and people of color and anybody who is othered in any way, shape, or form, or who hasn't been taught about negotiation or how to do these things right. And that was it. I was like, I can either teach tons of women how to negotiate, which I'm like, I will do. I'm like, or you legislate this shit. And I was like, no, that can't be hard. How hard can that be?
How hard can that be? Not harder than negotiating in this weird environment. Certainly, it's just negotiating with slightly different people about slightly different stuff. Yeah.
Right. And once you can get everybody on side as to why this is stupid, not in advocacy, I don't be like, this is the right thing to do. I'm like, no, this is just stupid. The fact that we're wasting time, even for employers are like, yeah, that's kind of stupid. Because that takes, I'm like, do you know how much time that takes your HR team? You know how pissed off people are by the time they get there and then they realize that you want to pay them $30,000 than what they're already making. People are rightfully pissed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, oh yes. I'm like, once people feel like something's stupid, legislation, easy peasy.
It's easy to change. Okay. Well, I'm conscious of our time, and speaking of legislation changing, you've got to get off to go convince some people things are stupid, so they'll do exactly that. So let me kind of give you the final question here, which is, if you've got one thought you want to leave people with at the end of this video about some of the bullshit narratives that go on around women's career development, what's the thing you want people to take away?
I want people to really focus on doing one thing for themselves every day, which feels like an act of advocacy for women. I was like, whatever that is, whether it's
audacity,
it's like the sheer audacity, and also say no to something. That's practice. I'm so good at saying no to things now. I say no to everything. And it's life changing. And people don't expect women to say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I tell people. I'm like, women, say no. let your children watch you.
Yep.
Out loud, answer emails loudly. No, I can't do that. No, I won't take that on. No, I'm not going to like volunteer my time for this. No, I'm not going to do that thing. I was like, for your daughters, your sons, for everybody.
For yourself. Damn.
It's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Okay.
Yep.
And so one more time, Allison, since we've had this long conversation, people will have forgotten your websites and Instagrams. What should they find you for? Where do they find you? How do they hire you? How do we give you money? Tell us those things.
This is momsatwork.com. And This is Moms at Work is also our Instagram handle, Allison Venditti, Venditti, because everybody loves to spell it very differently. On LinkedIn, basically the only way we were working with people right now, in Moms at Work is in our collective group. It funds all of our advocacy. It's the place where we hang out together. And that's where I do coaching. That's where I do all the other stuff. And I'm available via DM and that for people. But we really only have one program right now because our advocacy work is taking up so much of our time. Yay. But
yay.
Yay.
Thank God it's taking up your time. You're doing good stuff with that time.
Okay, yeah. But like, this is why advocacy groups like don't usually last because it's exhausting. But yeah, we're updating our advocacy page on our website as well, just so people can kind of see what we're doing. But we have a podcast on there as well. Just for me, the best thing that people can do is share our stuff with companies. We've got free resources for maternity leave. Like, we're trying to change the system in as many ways as we can simultaneously, like through employers, through individuals, through legislation. Like, I'll take the wins wherever we can get them. So that's my ask is I'm like, take our free stuff, share our free stuff.
Take our free stuff. That's right.
I'm like, we did all this work. We created My Parental Leave, which is Canada's first resource about how to navigate maternity leave from like getting pregnant to going back.
Right.
And we made it free because 95% of employers are small and mid-sized employers. So I'm like, we can do this better.
Okay. And then just one more thing. If the woman who should definitely be part of Moms at Work is watching this, and they definitely need to call you and they definitely need to join your community, how do they know? Who are they? What will they observe in themselves that says, I need Allison?
Basically, if you're watching this and you're like, yes, like, who is this person? Why are they speaking to me in a way that like, does that, I will say this. I'm like, I created the women's group just like you did for yours. And like, we created very different spaces for women. Most women's groups networking kind of sucks. But I believe that the collective does it differently. We do it with kindness and we do it with support, and our basis is helping each other. So if you've like felt alone, then that's a really good reason. Or even I tell people, I'm like, if you're like, I don't know if this is for me, I'm like, then just reach out and we can have a chat about it. Right. Like, you've kind of got to get the vibe even for your stuff. Like, I want people, like, that's what I said. I'm like, I don't need everybody to be in here, but like, we need people who need the right people to be in here, and people usually are pretty good at self-selecting. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Well, Allison, lovely having a conversation with you today. Go off and kick ass in Ottawa there. Thanks for doing that on behalf of all of us. And I'm sure we'll have time to chat again sometime in the future. Everybody go hire Allison, join the community.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.